Amy Sherman from MLive and Michigan's Best, and we continue our series, Crafted in Michigan, with Founders Brewing Company, and I'm excited to meet our next guest. She's an artist from Detroit. Her name is Desiree Kelly, and she has done some incredible collaborations and works of art, not just here in Michigan, but kind of all over the place, and it is really, really cool stuff. So Desiree, welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to be doing this Crafted in Michigan program with founders, because every week I get to meet a new artist or a musician or someone who's doing something so amazing across the state, especially during these very strange times. And when I came across your art, I feel like I've seen it. And then as I was going through, I'm like, oh, I have seen it. I've seen it at the Eastern Market. You know, I've seen it at the Foot Locker down on the East Side. I have seen your art, and I never knew it was you. So tell me a little bit about your art and how you got started, because you actually have a graphic design background.
Yeah, so I studied graphic design and worked for a magazine for a little bit. That was like my whole idea, was to do art but like have like a steady job. So anyway, I've always been involved in every aspect of the arts. I went to Fine and Performing Arts School when I was in elementary and middle school. So that's something that I've always continued to do, painting. I've taken to portraits because it was just something so interesting about people. Like, I'm kind of like a little bit of a history buff, but I'm halfway like lazy. So I want to get all that information like just right there visually. So that was like my idea about incorporating like a lot of like historical elements and doing political figures and public figures, and you know, the people that I select to depict in my work. So that's sort of like a mixture of everything, just historical, immersive, sort of different experience, a different way you can interpret portraits. Is not just about the person, but about like their life and their character as well.
Yeah, I've always thought that portrait painting is such a very personal thing, kind of an intimate type of painting, right? Because you're really trying to get into their soul, and you really, even though you're taking people that maybe we're very familiar with and see a lot of images of, you're creating something completely, a new interpretation of them.
Yeah. And that's, you know, I when I started off doing this, I decided to go into like a little bit of more of the political, but like satirical, sort of like lightening up the subject matter. So you see an Abe in shades or a JFK with like a crop face or something. It was like about how can you capture a person with as little amount of information first, and then sort of like pulling someone in by that and by the colors and everything, and then sort of unveiling and revealing a little bit more about them, or about my subject matter, as pretty much my timeline of my career as an artist. So sort of like digging deeper into ways that I can creatively have people like interact with my work, especially since a lot of them are in public spaces. It's not that you're readily like, you're looking for something to, you know, dive into that's like, you know, hardcore to interpretate. So it's, you know, a lot of it is fun, a lot of it is for the community, and a lot of it, it's just a creative way that I thought about connecting with people every day.
I like that. Well, let's talk a little about some of your community art projects that people can see out. A lot of them are outside on buildings and things like that. How is creating something like that different than, say, you know, 8x10 portrait that you might paint? I mean, I assume that the process is completely different.
Yeah, that's more of like the personal, my canvas work. Like if someone, I have a lot of stuff that are in restaurants, so a lot of those people that I depict on those portraits are pertaining to like the space. You know, so that's kind of like the difference, the major difference, I guess. And then the more of the outdoor stuff is more of not only to just, you know, beautify the area, but adding more value to your experience. And so the process, it really depends on like who I'm, you know, collaborating with. Because I mean, if I'm doing something with like a bigger brand, and their whole idea would be to connect with the region that they're trying to, you know, market to. And so my job there is to just try to like be the connector to tell their story, but tell, like, connect it to the community, especially with like a lot of like bigger brands are, you know, trying to be more like regionalized. So yeah, that's really like the process of that. But a lot of like the personal things are just about like telling people's personal stories or highlights of their life or accomplishments and things like that. And there's a lot more that I can even add to something that's on Canvas, because I like to incorporate a lot of like mixed media artifacts and things like that. So it's more of a hands-on like process, really.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about some of your collaborations, because as I was scrolling through, I mean, you have worked with some really big names across the country to create some different art projects. Talk to me about some of those.
Yeah, I mean, what do you want to know?
Well, I was thinking of, I saw Foot Locker, which had a new kind of flagship style store that they opened in East Point, right? And
Mhm.
you, what I was looking at is, like you said, you're a connector, but you were doing much more than just a mural on the wall. You were designing all sorts of different things for them inside the building and on products even, right?
Right. Yeah, so that was a really interesting when they decided to do that power store in Detroit. I had been working with them for like a little bit over 2 years at that point, just doing smaller things like in-store displays. So it started off with something smaller, and it, you know, I guess just to get the feel, and then, you know, randomly they're like, hey, we have this store, you have to do all of this. So so like yeah, that was a really cool project. I got to create a lot of apparel for them, and like just basically the the whole store, like put art everywhere. And they were completely open about my creative judgment, and just wanted me to put, you know, my style on everything, and have that Detroit feel. So yeah, that was a really cool project to do.
Has that been one of your, what's been one of your favorite collaborations that you've done with a corporation?
Um, prop, oh, it's so hard to choose that. They're all so different, and I can't even say like a past collaboration. What was fun, I guess, that when I the Pandora jewelry, that was really interesting. Because it was interesting to have my whole family actually involved in that project. Like I had never been out to LA before, and so they kind of like just put me in the middle of this idea. They're like, you know, we want to tell this story about love, and you know, things that we love, and it was kind of like the perfect idea, because I'm like, okay, how can I connect this jewelry to um, love and inspiration and people and all of these things, and creatively. And my husband's like, paint Isabella, like, you know, paint my daughter. So she was like the middle of that like branding when they did the global launch in LA. And so that's probably my favorite, because she was involved too. And it was a whole different experience doing something that was just, it was strictly like an outdoor artwork. I didn't have to do any other like media for them. So it was like short but sweet.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, do you sometimes think to yourself, I can't believe that this is where my life's taken me, this is where my art has taken me?
Yeah, it's really crazy, especially like now, going through this, you know, pandemic time, where a lot of artists aren't um, able to actively be working. That I have had a consistent like workflow, and I mean, the projects that are developing and that have still been, you know, going on this whole time is it's really remarkable, and I can't even believe it. So I mean, I talk about it all the time, like, really, like, how did they get my number? So it's incredible, and it's something that I kind of like, you know, every person hopes for. Like if you're an artist, you know, and this, like, growing up in Detroit, it was something I never like you never see like attainable. So to be able to do that and have to, represent my community and everything, and being able to say my voice, and also work with these larger purposes is incredible.
How does the city of Detroit inspire you and your?
I like to say, like, I am Detroit. Anything, like, I don't have to think about anything that basically comes out of my head and out of my fingers is Detroit. So, walking to school every day, seeing, like, the structure, like things being torn down and remodeled, and, the separation of everything. It just kind of like made me want to sort of preserve history more, because a lot of things I grew up with in that little bit of time is now like different. And I know it was different from when my mom lived. Like, we lived in the same neighborhood for over 50 years, and like that neighborhood doesn't exist anymore. And so I'm like, what is remaining there? Where did these people go? What are they doing today? And it's something like with capturing, like with painting portraits, is I'm able to sort of like immortalize that idea in people's history and make it beautiful, and people can, enjoy it as well. So that's,
Kind of get to create a little bit of new Detroit, right?
Yeah. It's interesting, like the new Detroit. And like I've been here my whole life, and, I don't know, like, I'm like, it's interesting to experience as well. And I'm happy to like be able to contribute to revitalizing everything, and bringing the whole community together. Because like Detroit is not just isolated, it's like our surrounding communities that, we all help each other. And that's I'm happy to be a part of connecting everybody.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, I think. I mean, I think that where Detroit's going is so, for me, I grew up down in Detroit too, and to see where it was, back in the 80s and what's happening now. I mean, I don't know if I agree with everything, but it's interesting to see the changes happen, and to watch parts of it be revitalized and come back. And of course, there's my mom crazy. She's like, that building's not, what is that? Every time I drive through. What kind of feeling do you get when you are out of Michigan, really? What is the reception to artists from Detroit? I feel like that has really been growing and changing over the last 10 years or so.
How are artists, how do they feel outside of Detroit?
No, how do people, how do they think of you outside of Detroit? Because I feel like artists from Detroit, it's like you kind of have a brand, right? You're from Detroit.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that over the last like 10, 15, 20 years, it's really exploded, the popularity of Detroit artists and artwork from the city.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because, I mean, like I said, like I'm surprised every day that, anybody even knows who I am. And so when I go out to play, I used to do a lot of like art fairs, like outdoor art fairs in the beginning of my career. And meeting so many people from different communities like Chicago or Miami, and they like either visit Detroit, like Detroit became like sort of like a space, like a travel space you had to go experience what's going on right now. And as an artist like me, a lot of my stuff is in public spaces. So, like you said, when you go to like an Eastern market or something and see my mural, like it kind of like, you have like that sort of connection. So like when I'm out, in different communities, for my particular experience, when people say, hey, did you paint that in, Collages or something? So like, it's really crazy to hear that. And I mean, it's to me, I think it's a real like international like hotspot right now, and you really have like a larger voice than ever before, being in Detroit, because everyone's either trying to come here, like visit, or just like, I don't know, like just explore or whatever. It's a really cool time.
Nice. So one of your several of your pictures, I had to click on them to make them bigger, because I'm like, what? That's not paint. That's like all sorts of stuff. Like you're almost making a collage of some of those.
Yeah, like I guess like like I said, like the more and more I dive into this art thing, like I just want to experience so many different things and add so many different things and explore and dive deeper into my craft. So like at this point, I'm like, what about make something that's like less paint, like 10% of paint and like everything else, but still like, create this portrait. Like the portrait is like the subject of this. So how can you tell a story with objects and like artifacts and sort of create a person out of objects, to either like it's interesting also because I like to have a lot of like hidden like things in those pieces. And so like recently I just did a Kobe Bryant piece that's like made of buttons and has like his championship rings, like replica championship rings throughout the piece, and like all these different things like tiny jerseys and things like that. But in the background it has like a collage of newspapers and achievements, like stuff in the press, that sort of like tell like his progression, like his lifespan, from like the beginning. And it's a fun like project as an artist because it's something I'm not painting, so it's like a challenge for me to how can I make this look like a person and how can I get the the point across as well. So that was like my personal challenge to myself to how I just dive into that. And it takes like, there's over like 7,000 pieces, like buttons and objects that are a part of this, and it takes hours to do.
Oh, I bet. Days, weeks, probably, right?
Yeah, like it's kind of crazy, but
oh, I think that's so interesting. Is it I know artists are always changing and developing and trying new things. I mean, have you seen yourself in that kind of progression of trying new techniques, doing different things? And has this time, the pandemic time, really given you more time to think about your process and what you might be doing?
So at the beginning of the year, I had a show at the Detroit Public Library, and it was a retrospective of portraits, and it was basically spanning the past 10 years of my career as an artist. And that whole show just kind of like started from, and the earliest piece was like from 2010, and that was just all paint. And you see how like everything like evolved like through my way of like storytelling, adding different more elements like fabric and like adding the collage, and you'd see how that progresses. But that was sort of like what I've been trying to do anyway, like just, keep elevating yourself, keep pushing yourself, try something new. But also like my, developing my own style. But this pandemic, like I've been like crazy busy doing projects. So I haven't even like done something personal, so this is a whole different, space for me. I'm like, I got to get back to painting, and do that. So I guess that's my
work.
that's like my headspace right now. I'm like, okay, I got to wrap up like these things, and then devote the amount of time to that. But I also have to continue to develop my craft, and I'm doing commissions. You're kind of like restricted with like doing what they're expecting, so that's another, kind of, challenge to like balance, staying creative, and innovative, and then, keeping your own, your business running as usual, basically.
Well, yeah, because being an artist is running a business. I mean, if you want to be successful at it, right? I mean, that's a whole different aspect. People don't usually talk about it, but
yeah,
it takes time.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting, especially the use of social media and like strictly having it be on the internet, or using a phone instead of like being in person for the past couple months. It's sort of like made you restructure. And I mean, you rely on I rely on myself, like as an artist, to push my brand, and how do I continue to do that, and how do I continue to get business? It's it can only happen like right now in 2020, because 30 years ago there wasn't an internet. So if this happened, there was no shows and stuff, and it's not possible to be an artist really without internet, I think.
Mhm. Well, Desiree, what can people maybe expect from you next? Are there any exhibits that are opening or that people can see online and experience them virtually?
I have a piece in a group show that's it just opened a couple weeks ago at Detroit Artist Market, and that's a piece that I took a long time to develop. It's actually it's of my grandmother and my great aunt, and it takes place in like 1960s, and actually like in my old neighborhood when I was talking about. So it was kind of like I don't want to say a remix, but it's kind of like they came out of the 60s to like modern day.
Oh,
So it's really interesting. But yeah, so that show is going on for until September 12th at the Detroit Artist Market, and you can see that in person and it's online. But I guess look forward to my next projects that I have. Some really big things launching within the next couple of weeks.
ooh, exciting. Well, if people want to get information about Desiree, your work, and some of the art and see some of the art, where should they go for all of that?
My website, DesireeKellyArt.com, my Instagram at Desiree Kelly Art. Get all the information.
Awesome. Well, Desiree Kelly, artist from Detroit, Michigan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, and thanks to Founders for sponsoring Crafted in Michigan. If you want to get more information, head to mlive.com.